Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to catch up and chat with amazing humans. For this episode, I'm really happy to introduce Shaun Brown to the conversation. Welcome, Shaun.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Welcome. And this is a special event, of course, and as you will no doubt hear throughout this day, that this is the Podathon. So, Shaun, you're number 2 on my list of episodes for today. So welcome along. As I always do, quick introduction, not too long, because I want you to talk. And Shaun and I have known each other for a few years, actually, and we got to know each other through a mutual company that we were working for at the time, Memia, now Happyful. And Shaun was a great writer for the magazine at times. He wrote some really interesting articles, insightful articles, but also worked with the customer services team and supporting all different elements within that business. He's now moved on from that role as well. I'm sure we're going to hear a bit about that too. But welcome, Shaun. Great guy. So lovely to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and give us your introduction.
Yeah, of course, mate. Thank you for having me. Like I say, I'm Shaun, 25 years old. I've got a young daughter who keeps me very, very busy outside of work, and got a lovely wife as well. In terms of my kind of work, as Matt said, I used to work with him at Memia and Happyful, an organisation that has mental health at its core. Now working in the dirty world of sales again, but again for another company that really values people being able to share how they feel, and it's lovely to have that inclusive environment, and it's something that for me personally in my day-to-day life is incredibly important to me, and kind of opening the conversation as all of these chats will do today. I think it's a fantastic idea, Matt, and looking forward to hearing them.
Yeah, brilliant. And you're a big part of this, of course, as well. And you know, the big question, let's jump straight in. Your journey with mental health. Let's talk about that. Let's hear your story. How's your mental health journey look to you?
I think my kind of mental health journey is, I think, quite typical of a lot of people in the UK, certainly over the last kind of 10, 15 years. So from kind of when I was a teenager, sort of 14, 15, I've started having feelings of depression and anxiety in various guises. I think I've always kind of had a bit of a social element to my anxiety when I was at school, when I was a young lad, which I'm certainly not anymore. My kind of feedback from teachers was always he's quite clever, but he needs to talk more, and it was always the social side of things that I kind of most struggled with, certainly internally, and that's kind of continued really throughout my kind of teenage years, and like I say, kind of midway through my teenage period of my life, started to kind of get these feelings of kind of depression and just struggling to have the motivation for certain things, struggling to be happy with certain things, despite having a kind of a very privileged background and childhood, one which I'm fully aware of and very thankful for. That's kind of continued into my kind of young adult life now. Like I said, I'm 25, and it's something that I kind of live with on a daily basis, but it has had the peaks and troughs, as everyone will have, who has had any kind of mental health will understand. Kind of coming to the head really, certainly in a work sense, where it was a real challenge just to kind of get out of bed in the morning, drag myself off to work, and then when I was at work, struggling to have any kind of get up and go essentially to do my job, and that's been something that, like I say, certain organisations I've worked for, including my current one and Memia, have been incredibly great at understanding and supporting, others less so, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But it's the anxiety kind of side of things. That's the one that I think I found most difficult to overcome since, like I say, mid teenage years. Getting in sort of supermarkets and things, just mundane day-to-day situations, especially now with a young child, if she starts dropping or something in the middle of Tesco, I'll just kind of suddenly start shaking and getting all panicky, and for no real reason, but I think that's kind of something that I want to get across, I guess, in that I know I'm not the only person that kind of has those feelings, and I think it's such a common one, and it's something that people might downplay and kind of overlook. And I guess the message from me, who is someone who's in a better place now, certainly not every day, every day is a challenge in different ways, but it's something that can certainly be managed, and I think from my kind of perspective, the thing that's really been helping me over the last year certainly is, instead of trying to kind of fight those feelings, just accepting them and living with them. Because I think if you try and fight anxiety head on, you will lose. But if you acknowledge it and accept that it's there and come up with ways of managing that, you'll be a lot more successful in dealing with that. So yeah, it's kind of a whistle-stop tour, I guess.
Well, it's really interesting because in your language and the way that you talk about your journey, and thank you for sharing that as well. You've normalized it. You've recognized it. You've accepted it. I want to go to that point actually. When did you accept that you had some challenges with depression or anxiety? What point did that happen, and how did that happen? Can you define that?
Yeah, I think so. In the initial instance, I know when it would have been kind of around 15, 16, I was struggling a bit. And I think my parents at the time not acknowledged that. And I went to see a counsellor, I think, once at age, but in the position in my life that I was in, I wasn't in a good headspace to do that. I wasn't, I didn't have the knowledge that I do now, and I kind of took it a bit lightly. And I was like, that's not going to help. Like, what am I going to talk about, kind of thing. So I think from there, I kind of muddled through for a few years, and it really wasn't healthy. It was, certainly when I turned 18, I discovered the wonders of alcohol, and then started drinking too much of those wonders. And that kind of certainly didn't help, as I think a lot of people will understand. So I think in terms of more in the adult sense, I kind of realized that I had more of an issue kind of around maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It started and then came to a head around kind of 2-3 years ago. And that's where it was starting to affect my work quite badly. One of the first jobs I ever had, working in retail, it was getting to the point where I was, to be blunt, I was making up excuses for why I couldn't go to work, because it was one physical health problem after another, or something like the train breaking down, something. It was getting more and more absurd reasons, because I couldn't verbalize. I didn't really know what I was feeling. So verbalizing that to someone, in a position of authority, my boss or whatever, just wasn't possible. But obviously, when it starts affecting your ability to do your job and earn money, then it becomes a real problem. So I think off the back of that, it did take quite a while for me to truly realize that I needed to get some kind of help or assistance with at least understanding how I was feeling. So around 1.5 to 2 years ago, when I was working at Memia, and where mental health was, my kind of working life, that was everything around that was centered around it. I started kind of looking into different options, whether that was kind of counselling, life coaching, things like that. And obviously understanding more the way that those services worked was a big benefit to me, because with anxiety, reaching out and saying I need help is terrifying and not something that was coming naturally to me. So yeah, I had a bit of online counselling through the NHS a couple of years ago. And again, I think I was more in the headspace then, like I say, but still wasn't truly fully ready to accept that, like, I need this now, kind of thing. And it was really the coaching that I had towards the start of last year, and I only went for 2 sessions. Never actually completed the sessions that I paid for because of COVID, and just haven't even gone back to it yet. But out of those 2 sessions, I took enough kind of tips to make me reevaluate how I deal with the feelings that I get, and also brought home to myself, like, you can be honest. If you're feeling really low, if you're feeling really anxious, if you can't physically get out of bed, having some kind of mental ill health is exactly the same as having a physical problem. It's just as debilitating, it's just as hard to overcome, and you need to give yourself just as much leeway to deal with that. So yeah, and like I say, in the past year or so, learning those kind of techniques has then helped me to get to where we are today, talking to you, because this kind of thing would not have happened a year or 2 ago. Whereas now I think I had one day where I was anxious about it, and that's it. So amazing. It's positive.
Yeah, and that is a huge positive. You're absolutely right. And having the opportunity to say it out loud and to tell other people is such an important part of the reasons why these stories are so important. Is it's normal. We live through it, yet we feel like it's abnormal and we shouldn't be experiencing it. And I genuinely thank you to you for sort of being so open and in the way that you present that as well. I think it's so important. I'm going to touch a little bit on that anxiety point, because you made a really interesting point, which was when I was noting it down actually, which was around having anxiety and reaching out for help. That piece is so challenging, right? So what was your brain telling you when you were trying to go through that process of getting that support and that help? Can you give us an insight into what might have been happening in there?
Yeah, I mean, it was more kind of screaming at me as opposed to telling me. And it was kind of, this is a bad idea. Because I think that's the thing with my anxiety, and I guess everyone's, is that you always fear the worst of doing something, and that's what stops you doing it. So I've always had an issue with public speaking for exactly the same reason. So yeah, as I was admitting to myself that, perhaps I do need to speak to someone or need help or whatever, yeah, taking that next step, my brain wasn't liking that at all, and that was having the physical kind of manifestation then in terms of the shaking, getting really panicky. So at work, at my last job, there were days where even when I made it in to the office, I was not fit to be there. Like, it was quite obvious, I think, to a lot of people. It was painfully obvious to me that I just was not, in any kind of fit state to be there. So I think that's more the side of things that I struggled with, was the physical manifestations of the kind of mental feelings, more than anything in that situation.
Yeah, and anxiety does come above a lot of different physical forms and sort of the things that come out when we're feeling more anxious about stuff. So, I just find this fascinating, and I know the people listening to this will, there'll be a lot of people out there who will feel very similar in trying to reach out for help, trying to get that support, and it's just that case of saying, look, it's okay, it will be okay, and talking about it isn't, it is hard. I get it, I do understand that, but when you do have the ability to talk about it, do you chat to your mates about it? Have you ever talked to your friends about it?
In the last year to 18 months, 100%.
Okay.
Before then, absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
It was, I think, over the last year or so, it's been something that has been really open. Like, I've been really open about it with friends, colleagues even. So like, I've been using LinkedIn a lot more in the last year because of my current job. And never in a million years would I've ever opened up in a professional sense about, something so kind of personal. But in terms of trying to normalize this, and it has been helpful for me. So now I'm, my LinkedIn is half my job and half mental health, essentially. It's kind of a mix of the two.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of something which that I would say to people, like, if you have the friends there who are willing to listen to you, or even just to be there to offer support, if they ask, how are you, and you're not good, tell them. Don't, and that's not attention seeking. Don't worry about that. If they're truly asking you, how are you, they will want to know the answer, and if it's not a good answer, they will try and help. So yeah, I'd certainly recommend, as I think you would as well, talking to anyone who can listen and can help.
Yeah, and often I sort of always think about calls that I take when I'm in the volunteering role that I do, and people say, oh yeah, but people have got their own problems, and they don't need to hear my woes and worries and things, and I don't think that's true, really. I think people, if they understand that you're struggling, then maybe we can help. What was the reaction when you told your friends? I'm always intrigued by this, because I know the answer. I hope I know the answer, but what was the reaction when you said about this?
Yeah, it was really supportive. Obviously, to start off with, I was kind of, I pick and chose the kind of friends that I would talk to, and people that I knew who were more open themselves about their own feelings, and ones that friends of mine who I knew I could tell anything to. But I think since getting the positive reactions from those close friends to me, and the willingness to listen and to help, that's opened up the conversation now. And if anyone ever asks me, how are you, I'll be honest to them, wherever, whether they're a kind of acquaintance or a best friend kind of thing. So I think it's getting over the initial hurdle by speaking to someone that you really trust. It is the most difficult, but once you've done it, it will open up a whole new kind of area that you can explore in terms of people to talk to. And I think, going back to your point there, about not wanting to burden people, that's still something that does cross my mind as well. I mean, I'd be lying if I said every single day, if I was stressed, I would tell someone. There are those days where I would still lie and say, oh, I'm fine, how about you, kind of thing. But as long as that's not the norm,
Yep.
then I think it's fine. You can have those days, and you can feel sorry for yourself some days. It's not, doesn't mean you've lost. It doesn't mean you've, if you've got 6 good days out of 7, you're winning. If you've got 4 good days out of 7, you're winning. So yeah, it's just all about being kind on yourself if you do have those times where you just can't verbalize it, and don't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, wise words, Shaun. Absolutely. So next piece then, COVID and the lockdown and the crisis, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's being called at the moment. How have you found that? Because I know a lot of people who struggle with their anxiety have found it challenging, but also on the other hand, some people have found it really calming in many ways for their anxiety. How have you found it?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think, as most people have. I mean, obviously, it's nothing that anyone has ever experienced before, so I think it's new to all of us. But for me personally, certainly having struggled with the more social side of things, and if I'm feeling low, having to get up, get dressed, go out the door to work, I have found it quite good, knowing, certainly in a work sense, not to be too work-centric, but knowing that all I've got to do, to start off with at least, is walk down my stairs and log onto a computer and not have to worry about, what if my bus is late? What if it's raining and I get soaked? None of that. It's just, make it downstairs. That's step one, and go from there. So I think in that capacity, it's been quite good for me in a way. And it's also allowed me to, in a personal sense, reevaluate what I want to achieve. From a personal development perspective. So I've always been like, there's so many books I want to read, I don't have the time. Now I'm saving an hour in a commute a day, I have the time, so I can do that. I can start picking up learning languages and things, and all of that kind of thing, and it helps you evaluate what's actually important to you and what you want to spend your time doing. Naturally, on the flip side, it has been tough, certainly with a young child, her not being able to go and see her grandparents, or our close friends who she loves as well, or trying to explain to a 3-year-old, you can see them but not close, you can't hug them, and it's that has been challenging, and sort of helping make sure she is okay and coping with that has been difficult. And my wife, and she won't mind me saying this at all, she has struggled more than me. She is more of a social butterfly kind of thing. She loves that work environment. She loves bouncing ideas off other people, and having that more social thing. And I think she's struggled more than me. Certainly, where we live, it's difficult to have 2 separate workspaces. And so if she's having to work upstairs or whatever in the bedroom, it's not ideal. So I think trying to compromise, and this goes for just general life outside of COVID as well, but certainly when you're spending so much time with each other, I think it's okay to argue, as long as you don't let that kind of fester, and as long as you can kind of make up after that and acknowledge and admit when perhaps you were getting a bit too angsty and had coffee or something in the morning. It's fine to clash with people you're going to, even those you're closest to. And I think that's been something that me and my wife have certainly done well at kind of learning over time. First couple of months of lockdown and things were difficult, but over time it's certainly got a lot easier. Now we know kind of how to give each other space, and we know when to do that. So but overall, to bring it back, I think it has been overall not too negative an experience for me personally.
Okay, brilliant. Well, and one other thing happened in there as well, right? You started a new job.
Yes.
Bizarrely, I didn't realize it was so long ago that you'd started a new job, because it's still March of 2020, of course. So how was that experience for you, starting a new job during lockdown, I guess, or restriction?
Yeah. Very, very strange, I have to say. To give some context, I started my new job on the 6th of April, so about a month or so into the pandemic. So my job interview was actually at a pub, because that was the only place really close to me, because social distancing was kind of just starting to come in, people were more aware of it. So that was the most obvious place at that time to have the interview, and that in itself was strange. But completely learning a new job virtually it was a struggle to some extent, but it's also been good, certainly from an anxiety point of view. I think a lot of people might be in the same boat. If kind of meeting new people, certainly a lot of people in one go, is daunting. doing it virtually is a lot easier. So
Okay.
I feel like kind of getting to know my colleagues and things over the last year, certainly in the first month or so. I mean, now I will actually make sure they're real people. But at that point, it did take a bit of the pressure off. But obviously, naturally, it's a lot more difficult to bounce ideas off people. It does take a bit longer to learn everything and to get the kind of vibe of the company and the culture of the company. And I think it's important for all companies really to make sure that they're supporting people throughout this. I mean, the company I'm working for now, EMAP Site, they have been so supportive of both myself personally, but just everyone in general. I mean, there's always, the culture is a virtual open door. At least you can, if you've got a problem mentally, physically, whatever, you can speak to people. And I think it's so important for every company to remember that, and to not, if you're not seeing someone every day, not just forget that they're there, forget that they are still struggling sometimes and things. So but it's been different. It's certainly been different.
So are you looking forward to the first time you can meet these people? Have you got any thoughts on what that might be like?
Yeah, it'll be nice to see how tall everyone is. It
sounds like what I was thinking.
Yeah, it sounds like a stupid thing, but I've been in the office once, and my MD Rich, when I met him for the first time, was like, "I never knew how tall you were." And it was like, this is not something that would have ever come up. So I always make the joke to kind of my clients in meetings and things. Obviously, it's difficult to know if you're actually real people, or it's kind of but it'll be good to actually meet everyone and just be able to go for a beer or a meal or something, and having a virtual Christmas party, as fun as it was, is not quite the same.
No, at least you didn't have too far to stagger home, right?
That's true. That's just make it up the stairs.
Bonus. Yeah, bless you. Shaun, it's been incredible. We're at the end pretty much of this. I'm going to give you a little sort of closing piece if you want to say anything to anybody that might be struggling or anything else. But from me, this is just an opportunity to catch up, and I haven't seen you for ages. We're friends connected on social media, and we sort of see each other's sort of ramblings and whatever goes on there. But we don't talk really, and I love this thought that we've just spent the last 25 minutes or so chatting. Any final thoughts from you? Any comments you want to share?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it's kind of twofold or threefold really. Firstly, it's been great to catch up, just to cover that off, and good luck with the rest of the 24 hours. But the two main things I wanted to just quickly say, firstly, to anyone obviously who is struggling with anxiety, depression, or anything, that first hurdle of admitting it to yourself and then verbalizing it to whoever you think will be the best person to verbalize it to, whether that is friends or family, or if you don't have them, the likes of Samaritans, Mind, and any kind of organization or people that you can speak to. It will help in some way. It might not seem like it at first, and it might make your anxiety worse for the 20 minutes before and after. But once you've got it off your chest, it will really help. So I mean, I'm kind of living proof that you can get beyond it. I've been to the point where my life hasn't seemed at points worth living, and I've come from that place to now having a family, an amazing job, supportive friends and family, and it does get better. So just always remember that. And finally, to people, you've got a fantastic range of people that you're talking to, which is brilliant. And I just encourage anyone from any background to kind of speak up as well, if you feel able to, because I don't know what it's like for a young black girl in America. I don't know what it's like for a soldier with PTSD or whatever, but other people will. So getting people from as many backgrounds and whatever as possible to be open about this, and hashtag end the stigma, is so important, because like I say, they will understand those people better than I will. So just keep talking and keep going.
Shaun, it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for your openness and for telling and sharing your experience, your story, your journey with mental health, and sharing all those details for people. And for anybody that is listening or watching this, there is always support out there. And as Shaun says, reach out, talk to people. It can be quite a challenge to jump that first hurdle, but once you do, it is, you have that wonderful ability to then be honest and open and share. So please do know there's always support out there. Samaritans in the UK, of course, is available 24/7, 116 123. Feel free, call if you need them, if you want to chat, if you want to just be honest about what's going on for the first time, maybe. Know there's always someone there. So Shaun, thanks again. Pleasure to see you, mate. Best of luck to you for your job, for the family, and for everything else that you're doing. And I'll see you soon.
See you soon, mate. Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.
Welcome. Cheers.